Good morning again. Our first reading is a brief one by the poet James Cruz. He is a queer poet who finds his identity and self and marriage newly under attack these days. This he published in his weekly newsletter, brand new, called Awake in a Strange Room. We have awakened in a strange room, nearly airless, and so tight the walls seem to be closing in. We have fallen to our knees, and though the new day says to rise, we let the light climb these walls for now. We are floored, having poured all of ourselves into hope's cracked cup. Still we must drink. Still, each ragged breath drawn inward feeds this body starved for more, deserving of love from a country that doesn't show it. We must follow the walls to find our way out and seek the love of those who still give it freely. These are our people. Our Bible reading is one of the assigned Bible readings for the day. It comes from Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, one of the earliest documents of the Christian New Testament. It's a familiar section of it. He's writing about a body. This is what he says. The body is one, even though it has many parts. All the parts, many though they are, comprise a single body. And so it is with Christ. It was by one Spirit that all of us, whether we are Jews or Greeks, slaves or citizens, were baptized into one body. All of us have been given to drink of one Spirit, and that body is not one part, it is many. If the foot should say, because I'm not a hand, I do not belong to the body, does that make it any less a part of the body? If the ear should say, because I'm not an eye, I do not belong to the body, would that make it any less a part of the body? If the body were all eye, what would happen to our hearing? If it were all ear, what would happen to our sense of smell? Instead of that, God put all the different parts into one body on purpose. If all the parts were alike, what would the body be? They are indeed many different members, but one body. The eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you, any more than the head can say to the feet, I don't need you. And even those members of the body which seem less important are in fact indispensable. We honor the members we consider less honorable by clothing them with greater care, thus bestowing on the less presentable a propriety which the more presentable do not need. God has so constructed the body as to give greater honor to the lowly members, that there may be no dissension in the body, but that all the members may be concerned for one another. If one member suffers, all the members suffer with it. If one member is honored, all the members share its joy. You then are the body of Christ, and each of you is a member of it. Furthermore, God has set up in the church, many gifts. First apostles, second prophets, third teachers, then miracle workers, healers, assistants, administrators, those who speak in tongues. Are all apostles? Are all prophets? Do all work miracles or have the gifts of healing? Do all speak in tongues? Do all have the gift of interpretation? And yet you strive for the greater gifts. But now I will show you the way that surpasses all others. And then if you've ever been to a wedding, you have heard the part that comes next, is about love. That is God's letter to the White House. I can't do everything, but I can do something. This can be an echo today. I can't do everything, but I can't. Oh, I'm sorry. If you ever went to a hip hop concert in the 80s or 90s, somebody would say, when I say hey, you say ho. Hey, hey. So I went to a couple of those. I know how it goes. I threw my hand up in the air and waved it like I just didn't care. So I can't do everything. You guys are so good. Okay, that's all right. there's room for the slow ones too. This is, if everyone was fast, where would the body be? I don't know. Many of you know that I donate platelets. I'm not the only person in the room that does that either. One day I showed up at the American Red Cross Donation Center. I went through the whole intake thing, got prepped, went to my seat, and was seated next to Dan Guest, who was finishing up his own platelet donation. Chestnut Hill United was in the house that day. What I like about platelets donation is what makes it a big ask for a lot of people, which is that it takes a long time. They pull your blood out of one arm and run it through a thing to separate out the platelets and then put the rest of it with some sort of saline solution back through the other arm. So you're just like this for at least 2 hours. So you just sit there in a chair with a screen that's attached to the chair, streaming Netflix. I watched Emilia Perez the other day. I can't tell you the last time I watched an Oscar-nominated film before the winners were announced. Yeah, a regular blood donation takes maybe 20 minutes. This is about 2 hours. I appreciate the forced relaxation time, which might be something that I should unpack with a therapist, but it's working for me these days. I appreciate it, and the snacks afterward. A few months ago, I was sitting in the little recovery area, enjoying my pretzels and juice boxes, and for the first time, I noticed what I'd never noticed before. There's a series of plaques along the wall. They were usually just visual noise. But I thought, oh, I've never seen these plaques. What are they? Each of them had 16 or 20 or 25 names engraved on them. And so I looked this time and saw that each of them had a year on it. And it said, these are the people who donated platelets at least 18 times this calendar year. Y'all, I have a goal. The thing about donating platelets, or donating whole blood for that matter, is that it offers a very obvious reflection on our interconnectedness. The substance of my body is literally inside other people's bodies. I have said before that visiting my friend Emily while she was getting a transfusion in the hospital created a new resonance for each time that I give platelets. But even without that firsthand experience, it's hard not to think about the fact that something is being taken out of your body so that it can be put into someone else's body. That is a profound and a profoundly vital fact. You never know whose body it goes into, nor do you have any say in that. It could be a child. It could be somebody undocumented. It could be a neighbor. It could be someone you love. It could be someone who voted for our unfolding national nightmare. The process is beyond political calculation and gets at the root of life. We are all connected. And the act of giving some of my health into someone's illness, without regard for who gets it, is in some small way an act of resistance against the forces of death. I can't do everything. Good. Oh, you guys are good. All right. We're all connected. We're all important. That's the message that Paul brings home in the Bible reading. He's writing to Jesus' communities in the Greek city of Corinth, which is an ancient city that has a very interesting history. In the year 146 BCE, in an act of imperial violence, Rome rolled in and just destroyed it. About a century later, Rome rebuilt it, roughly 44 BCE. They rebuilt it as a colony where they would send what they called the dregs of the surplus population from Rome itself, such as recently released slaves and displaced peasants. That's what comes from my Bible commentary. A little bit like Australia, I guess, the modern history of Australia. By the time Paul wrote this, another century later, sometime in the early 50s, Corinth was a cosmopolitan city with two major ports, which made it a busy trade hub and the center of the imperial Roman culture in Greece. What that meant, practically speaking, is that it was a diverse city that reflected the rigid social hierarchies of the Roman Empire, which made the Jesus movement there a diverse movement that also tended to reflect the rigid social hierarchies of the Roman Empire. And Paul had a little bit to say about that. In fact, for all of the criticism that we might throw at him, and Paul can come in for some criticism, this passage is bold and prophetic. The Jesus movement in Corinth was dependent, at least in part, on wealthy members who owned land and property and had the space where the groups would meet together. There's a section in this letter where he talks about the love feasts that they would have, which were communal meals where they would share communion together. And he comments on how the wealthy members would show up first to take all the best seats and eat all the best food before the poor members even got there to find the crumbs and the lousiest spots. And he lays into the wealthy members, the people on whom the movement depended, he lays into them for their sense of entitlement. It's a direct attack on the value system of the empire, which he says has no place in the Jesus movement. We might even call Paul an early proponent of DEI who recognized that appeals to meritocracy are mostly a smokescreen for being well-connected. He upends the social hierarchy by using a body metaphor that reminds us that we all need each other and that the most vulnerable deserve a place of honor. We all have gifts, and we are all needed. That is the message. It's as simple as that. Just as our physical bodies are a whole set of interconnected parts, each with their own necessary function, so is this thing called the church. We're all necessary to its functioning. I can't do everything. The beauty and the power of this passage is that it was written to a group of people who were defaulting to the patterns that they learned in the society around them. And he's telling them to do better. They could not simply reflect the inequality that was baked into their world. They had to challenge it. There's a word in there for us after the unfolding of this first week of American fascism. The new old president has worked quickly to show that he doesn't care about the Constitution, that he will seek revenge on people he sees as enemies, that he will use his position to enrich himself. He started cultivating a private militia by pardoning insurrectionists. His billionaire friend is going around throwing Nazi salutes, and he's still talking about mass deportations and sending ICE into places and causing fear. He tries to wear the name of Jesus, but it fits this Caesar about as well as a toddler's onesie would. Sorry for that image. Paul reminds us to whom we belong and who belongs to us and who needs protection and a place of honor. We cannot reflect the hatred. We have to challenge it. I can't do everything. This week I sent out an email asking what good things folks are doing out in the world. It's an important question because I think that it reflects an outgrowth of this body metaphor. If we are connected and necessary to the functioning of this organization, which we are, This organization also exists in an interconnected way with the world at large. We are responsible to it to contribute what we can to its health and thriving. I was curious to know some of the unseen ways, the ways unseen to most of us, that this is happening. Based on the responses that I got, we're showing up in real and tangible ways to support the greater good. Here are things that you said. The driver for Manna once per week, delivering special diet food to disease-impacted residents, and food rescue to Mount Airy Community Pantry weekly, food rescue to Abbotsford Homes weekly, at least 1 to 2 volunteer events with Phil Abundance each month. I can't do everything. I volunteer with the Philadelphia Center for Adaptive Sports, which provides sports opportunities to persons with various disabilities. I volunteer primarily with Philadelphia Adaptive Rowing and have helped adaptive rowers be able to row on the Schuylkill River. I help with the classification process that helps to determine what level the athlete can compete so that rowers compete against those at similar levels of disability. We have actually had rowers who've progressed far enough to compete in the Paralympics. I can't do everything. Annual Manna Thanksgiving deliveries to vulnerable families. I volunteer at the zoo and have for 12 years. Of course, the creatures are fabulous, but I also love talking to the guests about many important things like environmental issues and climate change. I volunteer with the Philly Goat Project, and in the past I've done wildlife rehab with the Philly Metro Wildlife Center. I can't do everything. I volunteer at the Public Museum demonstrating wood turning on an 1890s era lathe, and I give away what I make to the visitors. And then after Christmas, we purchased 20 items of warm clothing and took them to a homeless assistance center. I volunteer at the Family Promise Food Pantry. I visit hospice patients and sometimes stand in for caregivers and help someone write a story of their life. I help with community projects like downtown merchants and art celebrations. I also find things to do through our library. My librarian wife would love this one. Like supporting reading programs for migrant children, heading up a millage renewal campaign. I've just accepted a position as a trustee on our library board. And of course, there's always unofficial volunteering as a grandma babysitter. I can't do everything. Who knew grandmas needed babysitting? Maybe I misread that. I had a couple of parents of young children reach out to me to say that they don't really have a whole lot of time for volunteering these days. And that was just a limitation on how I phrased the question. I said volunteering, which also leaves out some of the paid work and ways that you contribute to the world in this life. But I told these parents that unless those kids are paying them, the work that they're doing to shape them into loving and compassionate human beings is volunteering of the highest order. I can't do everything. I am a tree tender with East Falls Tree Tenders. I also volunteer with Ladies Let's Talk, which helps my immigrant women with conversational English. And I'm on the executive council of Women's Connections Giving Circle, whose focus is on supporting nonprofits that work in the area of juvenile justice. We volunteer with Wissahickon Trails and a dog rescue. I can't do everything. I'm working on a website I plan to sell in a few years and use the proceeds to assist a current nonprofit or open my own to teach carpentry, plumbing, and electrical skills to underserved populations. Volunteering where I live to push to convert municipal operations to renewable energy. Y'all can guess who that one is. That person goes on to say, these efforts, plus a few others, have resulted in township operations avoiding 5.8 million tons of carbon pollution annually. This makes my heart sing. Also, she's helping to arrange neighborhood potlucks to educate people about how much can be accomplished at the local level. I can't do everything. It's been a hell of a week. and not even a week. And it will get worse. It's easy to feel numb and overwhelmed, but we cannot stay numb and overwhelmed, especially those of us who are the least directly impacted by the threats and terror coming from the White House. We are connected to people who are the most directly impacted. They are a part of us, and we are a part of them. There is work that we have to do for a world that is in danger. So we do the work that is ours to do. Because we can't do everything, but we can do something. This is God's good news. Amen.